Everybody, I'm Garrick DeMeyer from Royal Constrictor Designs. Make sure to check out my website, Royal Constrictor Designs, to see which snakes I have available right now. And I'm actually feeding all the babies today, so I've got a big, lots and lots of babies that I'm feeding. We're actually getting, starting to sell out, and we have a lot of snakes left yet, but they're selling pretty well. But still a big job for feeding. I usually feed my babies on Thursdays, and I just thought that I wanted to show how I feed frozen thawed to my baby ball pythons. It's one of the most common problems that I have when I sell snakes to customers is they have a hard time getting the snakes to eat. Well, part of that's acclimation and how you have the cage set up, making sure the temperatures are okay. They have a hot spot, a cool side, the humidity is good, 65 up to 70% is usually pretty good. But a lot of it is how you present the rodents to the snake. I've heard all kinds of different methods of heating the rodents up. If you just thaw a rodent out to room temperature, the snake, a ball python, isn't going to really recognize that as food, at least not most of them. Ball pythons need their prey to be warm, like as if a live rodent would be. So there are lots of different methods that some people use to heat the rodents up. Hot water, a hair dryer, I've heard of all kinds of different things. And that does work for a lot of ball pythons. However, over the last 20 plus years of breeding ball pythons, I figured out that using a heat lamp to heat the rodents up is definitely the best way to go. I get the best feeding response from a very warm, dry rodent. I try to get the body temperatures of the rodent up to about 105 to 110 degrees, and I do that by putting them underneath a lamp. So I'm heating up, hundreds of rodents at one time. So I'll normally cover this whole thing with paper towel, and then I've got multiple heat lamps all shining down in various spots. And I can turn on different lamps and turn off different lamps depending on how many rodents I have. But basically, I'm trying to get the rodents warm enough so that if you hold them in your hand and cup them like that, they feel pretty significantly warm. Like, they're not burning your skin hot to the touch, but they feel pretty hot. And if I temp gun them, they'd probably be right around 110 degrees. If you do that, and most ball pythons will eat frozen thawed. My ball pythons will anyway, because that's what I feed to the majority of the babies that I have here, and a lot of my holdbacks, and a lot of subadults that I have. And my breeders will usually eat frozen thawed, although I normally feed those live, mostly just to save time. It's a lot of work to feed 2,000 to 2,500 ball pythons in a week, so it's a lot quicker if I just feed live rodents to my breeders. The main problem is heating up enough larger rodents like that. If you're heating up 500, 600 medium rats, that takes a lot more than just this one tray. Like, you'd need a huge, you'd almost need like an oven or something to heat all those up, which would be really, really gross. So basically, I feed the hatch, when I first hatch babies, I feed them live crawler mice. Here's a bunch of live mice. My newly hatched babies eat mice that are about that big. They're big enough to crawl around, so they usually give a good feeding response to a hatchling ball python, but they're not big enough to really potentially cause harm to the baby ball python. So once they eat 4 to 6 meals of those, then I switch them over to frozen thawed. And then by then they're usually eating a rodent that's about this size, so in my hand about that size. And then as the snakes get bigger, then I'll feed them larger mice, and then I'll also move a lot of them over to rats too. Some of my snakes eat mice, some of them eat rats. A lot of my babies that are for sale, I'll typically feed mice too, but I'll give them a rat every once in a while just to make sure that they'll eat them. I want my rodents to be really versatile so that they'll eat almost anything you give them. And of course, any ball python that'll eat frozen thawed will also eat live, probably even more enthusiastically than frozen thawed. So anyway, basically all I do to feed these is open this up, and I'm heating these rodents up right in the room where the snakes are. As soon as I turn those lights on and those rodents start warming up, every snake in here knows that it's feeding time. So then of course you have to be careful not to get bitten. So sometimes I'll take the rodent and I'll put it right underneath the heat lamp like this, holding its head up there for a count of about 3 seconds to even give it a little bit more heat right on the head. So the snake will really key in on that temperature. There. As soon as he wraps, close the door. or close the drawer. Now here's a bigger one. And when I'm feeding this many rodents, sometimes I'm not quite giving them the ideal size. You know, when I get down to, you know, it's hard to figure out how many rodents that I need to thaw out for a different size based on the size of the snake. Now this one's being a little difficult. It has eaten frozen thawed lots of times though. So sometimes I'll just put that one underneath the heat lamp again and I'll grab a different one. This rodent is this mouse is a little bit too small for the ideal size for the snake. Come on. Boy, this is really unusual. Okay, so this one for some reason is just deciding not to eat. Oops. That wasn't a good idea. Never want to get your head down right in front of a snake like that, because they can strike, and striking at your face probably isn't a real good idea. So let's just try this one. Find an appropriate size rodent. I don't know, let's go with this one right here. There. Let's try another bigger one. And a lot of times you can tell if they're going to eat or not just by how they're positioned and how they look. A lot of times if they strike and then they either let go or they just kind of strike and don't actually grab it, most of the time it's because the rodent isn't warm enough. Like I said, you really got to get it warmed up really well before offering it to them. Otherwise, they're not going to take it. And that's why the heat lamp method for me works better. It keeps the rodents dry, allows them to get warmer than just using hot water or hair dryer or whatever other method. It's just an easy way to go. One thing you got to be careful of though. Okay, these heat lamps, I have floodlights in these. I think they're 75-watt floodlights. It's pretty hot. You put a little mouse like this under there, and if the mouse is already thawed out and it's getting warmer and warmer and warmer, it's going to spoil pretty quickly. Then you go and grab the mouse and it just bursts. So it takes a little bit of time to figure out how much is hot enough and how much is too much. So that'll take a little trial and error, and unfortunately there's no real way to tell you exactly how many minutes, and because like our room is 80 degrees, I got certain wattages of heat lamps. Everybody's going to do that part of it a little bit different, but you just want to keep a really close eye on your rodents, especially at first, so that you know when it's time to feed them. So anyway, hope this was informative and hope it helps you to figure out how to feed your ball pythons frozen thawed. And if you have any questions or comments, leave that below. Otherwise, that is it for today. I just wanted to make sure, like I said, it's the most common problem that people have with ball pythons, and I get the question so many times, I just figured, why not just make a video of it, explain myself one time so everybody can hear and hopefully understand what I'm trying to say, and hope you enjoyed it. So anyway, to check out what ball pythons I have for sale, again, make sure to check royalconstrictordesigns.com. I'm in the process of adding a lot of new snakes. I'm always in the process of adding a lot of new snakes. So definitely check that out, and I will be back next week or at some point very soon with another video, probably showing you some more snakes.